Good afternoon, everyone. So our topic today it's all about the authentic assessment, meaning, method, and tool. So before we start our topic today, I will show you some picture, which is one of the example of authentic assessment and non-test assessment. So now let's proceed. So in the first slide, can you determine which this one of example of? Yes, you are right. Yeah, this is a authentic assessment. So how about the second slide? This is one of example of, yes, you are right. This is a non-test assessment. So now let's proceed to learning outcomes. So at the end of the chapter, the student should be able to explain the meaning of the authentic assessment and non-test assessment. Meaning of authentic assessment. Below are a description or explanation of authentic assessment from several authors. So, authentic assessment is a form of assessment in which students are asked to perform real-world tasks that demonstrate meaningful application of essential knowledge and skills. So, this is according of Moyler 2011. Authentic assessment is focuses on the performance of the student, access the ability of the student, how they can turn their learning into actions. For example, the teacher will give the task to the student to make role play of what they learn in that certain day. So, according to Moore 2008, he compares the traditional assessment and authentic assessment. And the first one, attributes, so action and option. And then traditional assessment, selecting a response. Authentic assessment, performing a task. So example of selecting a response, a student may be a given task to perform and asked to select an individual tool from a set of virtual tools. So example of performing a task is creating a portfolio or the work of the student, and then developing through analysis and essay. And the last example is completing an original research paper. And then the second one is sitting, retrieve an image. So example is creating a poster or slogan. And then simulation or real life is one of example is making a film or role play. And the third one is a method. So traditional assessment, recall or recognition, and authentic assessment is construction and application. So one of example or recall and recognition is storytelling, flashcards, and fill in the blanks. And about the construction and application, so one of example is debate and consume mapping. And then the fourth one is focus, and the traditional assessment at teacher structure, and authentic assessment is student structure. So one of example of teacher structure is a major exam, and the student structure example of a performance task. So and the last one is outcome, and then traditional assessment, indirect evidence, authentic assessment, a direct evidence. So indirect evidence, one of example is survey, exit interviews, focuses groups, and the use of external reviewers. And then in the direct evidence, one of example is examples include papers, quizzes, and exams. It can be music, theater, and dance performance, and execution of safety procedure. Non-test assessment of learning. So non-test assessment is an alternative assessment in the sense that it diverts from the paper and pen test, which is only test known to many. It is an assessment that measures student abilities directly with the real task. So when we talk about non-test assessment, it focuses on the written test assessment for the student, which is it is what the student know and what the student need to know. So if it simplify, it measures the academic knowledge of the student and not the skills. So now let's proceed to the example of non-test. So the first one is portfolio. So portfolio is a purposeful collection of the student's work that exhibit the student efforts, progress, and achievements in one or more areas of a curriculum. Teacher observation. So the teacher observed the student while they work to make certain the student understand the assignment and or another task. So example is cooperative learning. Slates or hand signals. So students use slates or hand signals as a means of signaling answer and hold up slate. So the first one is a daily assignment. So the student completes the work assigned daily to be completed as at work or at home. So one of example is worksheet or research. The next one is a journal. Students write daily assigned or personal topics. So one of example is what do you remember in yesterday's lesson? So the next one is games. So the teacher utilize fun activities to have student practice and review concepts. One of example is science trivia, math trivia, or any fun activities. So now let's proceed to project. So after the students are taught the basic of triangles, such as types of congruence, proof, and similarity, each student it's asked to create a poster, drawing, or personal adornment such as fingernail, design, piece of jewelry, or tattoo that uses at least two difference. So now let's proceed to debate. So the student take opposing position and topics and define their position. So one of example is the pros and cons of environment legalization. So now let's proceed to checklist. So the teacher will make the list of objective that the student need to master and then check off the skills as the student masters it. So now let's proceed to model. So the student produce a miniature replica of a given topic. So one of example is planetarium. So now let's proceed to notes. So student will write a summary of the lesson. So one of example is outline of the day's lesson. Next one is panel discussion. Panel discussion is talk about the group of the student verbally present information. So one example is a discussion presenting both pros and cons of the environment issues. So now let's proceed to demonstration. So the student present a visual enactment of a particular skills or activity. And then the next one is a problem solving. You are teaching a unit and basics on levers to test your student knowledge. You give a lab worksheet and focusing on type of levers and forces. So now let's proceed to discussion. So discussion, a student in the class verbally interact on a given topic. So one of example is discussion on climate change. So before we wrap up this session, do you have any questions or clarification? Okay, none so far. Okay, thank you for listening, and God bless.
Evening, everyone. So tonight I will continue our reporting and I will tackle about authentic assessment complements traditional assessment. With authentic assessment, you may be made to think that we have now to junk the traditional assessment. But no, since the authentic assessment and traditional assessment complements each other. So assessment is not a matter of either or. So basically, we all know from our previous reporters that authentic assessment and traditional assessment are two approaches used in evaluating the students' learning outcomes. So, in authentic assessment, as what Kristen J mentioned in her previous discussion, so it is an approach that evaluates students' abilities in real-life situations, while the traditional assessment, it evaluates students' learning outcomes based on a predetermined standards or objectives. So, in authentic assessment, as what I have mentioned earlier, that it focuses on real-life application of knowledge and skills. And it also requires students to analyze, to synthesize, and evaluate information, which encourages critical thinking skills. And the traditional assessment, it focuses more on memorization of facts and concepts, and it often requires students to recall information. So indeed, the authentic assessment is encourages students to apply their learning to real-life situation, which helps them to develop skills that are more relevant in real world. And as an educators, we can see to it that most teachers are using traditional and authentic assessment together in teaching and learning processes to serve different purposes. So we all know that as we future educators that we have to identify our students learning and how we can assess them by providing them different kind of assessment in order for us to be an effective and to help them mold along. And by that, by the combination of traditional and authentic assessment, we can assess the student what are their strengths and what are their weaknesses in order for us to guide us for us to guide them effectively. So Robert Marzano proposed a new taxonomy of educational objectives. So it incorporates a wide range of factors that affects how learners think and provides a research-based theory to help teacher improves their learning or their learning improves their learners' thinking. So, a new taxonomy of educational objectives, it is basically proposed, as what I have mentioned, it was proposed by Robert Manzano. So, it is a framework for categorizing and organizing the goals and objectives of education, and it is based on a research in education, psychology, and cognitive science. And the taxonomy consists of three systems and a knowledge domain. The cognitive system processes all the necessary information and knowledge, which consists of information, mental procedures, and physical procedures. The metacognitive system sets goals and keeps track of how well these goals are being achieved, and the self system decides whether to continue the current behavior or engage in a new learning activity. So, what is the self system? So, the self system, this is a system that focuses on development of students' attitudes, beliefs, and values. It includes goals related to self-awareness, self-efficacy, and self-regulation. And the metacognitive system, this system, it focuses on the development of students' thinking skills and, of course, the metacognition. It includes goals related to critical thinking, the problem solving, and also decision making. So that is the metacognitive system. And how about the cognitive system? The cognitive system, this system is also focuses on the development of students' content knowledge and skills. It includes goals, the goals related to knowledge acquisition, of course, comprehension, the application analysis, the synthesis, and of course, the evaluation. So, the knowledge domain, which is the basic and authentic assessment, is the subject assessed by traditional methods. So, Marzano states that knowledge is a critical factor in thinking without sufficient information about the subject being learned. The other systems have very little to work and are unable to engineer the learning processes successfully. So, knowledge is the fuel that powers the thinking process. So, Marzano identifies three categories of knowledge. So, what are they? They are the information, the mental procedures, and physical procedures. The information is the what of knowledge, and the procedures are the how to. So, what is information? So, information, this is a type of knowledge domain, involves the acquisition of factual information. So, students are expected to memorize and recall information about a particular topic. So, like for example, in a history class, students might be expected to memorize dates, names, and the events. And how about the mental procedures? So in mental procedures also, this type of knowledge domain involves the development of cognitive skills and procedures, wherein students are expected to learn how to analyze, to evaluate, and synthesize information. Like for example, in a science class, so students might be expected to learn how to conduct experiments and also to analyze data. And how about in the physical procedures? So of course, this knowledge domain involves development of physical skills and processes. So students are expected to learn how to perform a specific task or procedures. So like for example, in a vocational education class, so students might be expected to learn how to use a specific tools or equipment. So Marzano's framework suggests that different type of knowledge domains require different instructional strategies, of course. So, for example, the acquisition of factual information may be best achieved through memorization and repetition, while the development of cognitive skills may require more active engagement and problem solving activities. And the development of the physical skills may require hands-on practice and feedback. So, by understanding the different types of knowledge domain, educators can design more effective instructional strategies to help students learn and master the content of a particular field of study. So, of course, because we have different kind of knowledge, and we teacher must be able to identify it so that we can provide them the most effective method and instructional materials that would be fit and beneficial for us and for our students also. So let us move on. So even the P21 framework for the 21st century skills has a basic knowledge and skills. The 3Rs and the 21st century themes, which is global awareness, which consists of financial, economic, and business, entrepreneurial literacy, civic literacy, and health literacy as foundation for 21st century skills, namely learning and innovation skills, information, media, and technology skills, life and career skills. So, this means basically that basic knowledge and skills cannot be dispensed without traditional assessment. So which means that basic knowledge skills is here to stay. So the traditional and the non-traditional assessment really complements each other. So, if you have a question about the P21 framework, so let me narrow that down. So, when we talk about the P21 framework, so it is a model incorporating the 21st century skills into learning. So, this is also known as Partnership for 21st Century Learning Framework. So, P for partnership. It is a model for integrating 21st century skills into education. So, it emphasizes the importance of developing 21st century skills in students to prepare them for success in a rapidly changing world. And the framework provides a roadmap for educators to integrate these skills into their teaching practice and to perform these tasks, academic tasks, and are also used to evaluate whether and to what extent school programs have achieved their goals. Or it emphasizes the importance of developing 21st century skills in students to prepare them for success in a rapidly changing world. So the framework, it provides a roadmap for educators to integrate these skills into their teaching practices and for students to acquire the knowledge and skills that we need to thrive in the 21st century. So, as what I have mentioned earlier, that even this 21st P21 framework, it has a basic knowledge and skills. So, it starts from the basics. So, that's we can say that the authentic and the traditional assessment really complements each other. So now, let us move on to non-test indicators. So what are non-test indicators? So these are academic tests that are typically relied upon to assess the performance of students in educational tasks. So, since schools are changed with the major responsibility for preparing students with the major responsibility to perform this task, academic tests are also used to evaluate whether and what extent school programs have achieved their goal. So the non-text indicators, so it refers to any measurement or evaluation method that is not based on a standardized test or assessment. So these are indicators that often used in educational settings to assess students' academic progress or effectiveness of teaching methods. So non-test educators are or can take many forms. So it includes the classroom observation, student portfolios attendance records, parent-teacher conferences, the student self-assessments, and also teacher evaluation. So, on overall, the non-test indicators provides a more comprehensive view of students' academic progress and can be used in conjunction with the standardized tests to gain a more complete understanding of their learning development. So it will help them to their progress and basically can be used in conjunction with standardized tests for them to gain a more complete understanding of their learning and of course development.
Now, we are talking about transversal competencies. So what are transversal competencies? Are competencies that are transferable between jobs, and that is why they are also called transferable competencies. People used to call them experience, soft skills, emotional intelligence, and employability skills. They are not job and sector specific skills. They are a set of competencies related to attitudes and values, knowing how to be and procedure know-how. They can be transferred from one specific task to another. They can be used in a wide variety of situations and settings. Learning transversal competencies puts every graduate of any educational program at an advantage in the future. So, these are the list of transversal competencies that the 2013 Asia Pacific Education Research and Institution Network Research and Report. So the first one is the critical and innovative thinking. It involves creativity, entrepreneurship, application skills, and reflective thinking and reasoned decision making. When we say creativity, it is the ability to use a wide range of creation techniques to create new and worthwhile ideas as well as observable creations. In entrepreneurship, it is a combination of technical, business management, and personal determination, innovation, and risking skills. Application skills, this refers to necessary implement innovation. Reflective thinking is the ability to reflect experience or critically learning experience and a process in order to inform future progress. Reasoned decision making is the ability to use a various types of reasoning as appropriate to the situation. So the second one is the interpersonal skills. It involves communication skills, organizational skills, teamwork, and collaboration. Communication skills includes the ability to articulate thoughts, ideas effectively using oral, written, and nonverbal communication in a variety of forms and contexts. Organizational skills refer to the skills such as general organizing, team administration and planning, time management and meeting deadlines. Teamwork refers to the skills necessary to be able to work with others towards a common goal. Collaboration is the ability to work effectively and respectfully with diverse teams, including the skills necessary to exercise flexibility and willingness to be helpful in making necessary compromises to accomplish a common goal. So the third one is the media and information literacy. Includes ability to obtain and analyze information through ICTs, ability to critically evaluate information and media content, and ethical use of ICTs. Ability to obtain and analyze information through ICTs refer to the skills required to identify and locate and access appropriate information sources and interpret this information and draw conclusion based on analysis. Ability to critically evaluate information refers to the skills required to evaluate the quality, appropriateness, and value of the information as well as its sources. Ethical use of ICTs refer to the skills required and the ability to apply a fundamental understanding of the ethical, legal issues surrounding the access use of information technology. The fourth one is the global citizenships. It involves respect of diversity, intercultural understanding, and democratic participation. When we say respect for diversity, it includes the skills to understand, negotiable, and balance diverse views and beliefs to reach workable solution, particularly in multicultural environment. And when we say intercultural understanding, it refers to respecting cultural differences and work effectively with the people from a range of cultural backgrounds and responding open-minded to different ideas and values. The last one is the democratic participation. So, it refers to the skills and necessary for participating effectively in civic life through knowing how to stay informed and understand governmental processes. Transverse competencies are the 21st century skills found in the several frameworks. Research-based construct includes critical thinking, collaboration, creativity, motivation, and metacognition. P21 framework terminology includes learning and innovation, critical thinking, learning, innovation, communication and collaboration, learning and innovation, creativity and innovation, life and career skills, initiative, flexibility, and life and career skills, self-direction, productivity. NRC framework terminology includes cognitive, critical thinking, interpersonal complex communication, social skills, teamwork, cognitive, non-routine, problem-solving, interpersonal, self-development, adaptability, interpersonal self-management, self-regulation. ATC framework terminology includes ways of thinking, critical thinking, problem solving, and decision making, ways of working, communication, and collaborations, ways of thinking, creativity, and innovation, living in the world, adaptability, flexibility, self direction, ways of thinking, metacognition, or learning to learn. Thank you.
In performance or authentic assessment, students have choice to construct their own responses. This may lose greater challenge for scoring for teachers as compares to scoring traditional assessment, but may give opportunities for students to develop higher level thinking skills. Now, direct methods of evaluation. Authentic or performance assessment use direct methods such as judging demonstration of a dance step, oral presentations to assess speaking rather than asking students to enumerate the dance steps in order to describe good oral presentation in a paper and pencil test. Direct assessment refers to any method of collecting data that requires a student to demonstrate a knowledge, skill, or behavior. Direct assessment involves measures of students' learning that ask students to directly demonstrate or perform the desired knowledge or skills. Examples include papers, quizzes and exams, music, dance performances, or execution of safety procedures. Let's proceed to self-assessment. In authentic performance assessment, students may be given the opportunity to assess their performance with the use of scoring rubric. The purpose of a self-assessment is to help an individual know the extent of their abilities and to improve upon them. It can be daunting to a student when they first start self-evaluating, but over time, it becomes more natural. Next, we have assessment of group performance as well as individual performance. Some performance or authentic assessments evaluate how students perform individually and how they perform as a group. A group may be directed to come up with a capstone project. They may be evaluated for the group's output and individually for the individual members' contribution. It will enhance teamwork because both individuals will work hard in order to receive a good feedback among them individually. Lastly is the extended period of time for assessment. In contrast to the traditional assessment, performance and authentic assessment usually requires an extended period. In traditional assessment, a written test may require an hour or less, but the completion of a research paper may require months and may be evaluated monthly to check on the student's progress. An extended performance assessment measures learning over a period of time. Now let's proceed to the characteristics of 21st century assessment. Those are essential guide for preparation of authentic assessment activities. It is necessary to refer to this characteristic to ensure that the learners are being assessed towards the skills and demand of the 21st century. Now let's find out the characteristics of 21st century assessment that are given here and with the features of authentic assessment discussed a while ago. First is responsive. Visible performance based work generates data that inform curriculum and instruction. It is an approach to academic assessment that shifts the focus away from routine application of standardized assessment measures and toward understanding the immediate educational needs of learners. Next is flexible. Assessment needs to be adaptable to students' setting. Rather than the identical approach that works in traditional assessment, 21st century approaches are versatile. When we say versatile, it means able to adapt or be adapted to many different functions or activities. Next is integrated. Assessments are to be incorporated into the day-to-day practice rather than as add-ons at the end of instructions or during a single specified week of the school calendar. When we say integrative assessment, it is a design that seeks to combine students' learning from multiple modules and or levels into a single assessment. Such assessments are synoptic, meaning that students are required to make connections between knowledge and learning that span multiple modules and topics. Um, Informative. The assessment results give information on whether or not the desired and targeted 21st century skills, which are clearly stated and explicitly taught, are realized. It focuses on how teachers and students make use of assessment information to understand and improve learning. Informative assessment brings together research underpinning assessment for learning with the research on high performing school systems, how students learn, and highly effective teachers. Multiple assessment or methods. It is an assessment of continuum that includes a spectrum of assessment strategies is the norm. It is an assessment process refers to using multiple methods or a range of strategies to make decisions regarding instruction and gathering information about students' performance and behavior in order to diagnose students' problems, monitor their progress, or give feedback for improvement. Next, we have communicated. Communication of assessment data is clear and transparent for all stakeholders. It is the process communication educators use to determine whether their students have learned what they intend for them to learn. Assessment uses basic research techniques in order to collect data about student learning. Next, we have technically sound. For fairness, adjustment and accommodations are made in the assessment process to meet students' need. It gives meaningful and accurate information. Informal assessment can be technically sound to an extent because they're based upon the experiences, skills, knowledge, and training of test taker. Lastly, systematic. 21st century assessment is part of a comprehensive and well-aligned assessment system that is balanced and inclusive of all students, constituents, and stakeholders, and designed to support improvement at all levels. To assess the effectiveness of the entire system and the extent to which the vision and the goals of the education transformation process are being achieved by it. That's all. Let's proceed to the next reporter.
Process oriented assessment is a learning outcomes in a form of procedural knowledge require demonstrations of the process or procedure, and they call for a process oriented assessment. Process oriented assessment helps you answer these questions as it involves integrating data from multiple sources, focusing on behaviors that are exhibited while individuals complete different tasks, making decisions as to which subtests from specific tests should be administered. These are examples of learning outcomes that fall under process oriented assessment. These are lifted from the K 12 curriculum guide and course syllable on principles and methods of teaching and assessment and learning 1 and 2. First is recite a poem with feeling using appropriate voice, quality, facial expressions, and hand gestures. English, grade 5. Perform a skit on the importance of a national language, mother tongue, grade 3. Relate story, events to one's experience, mother tongue, grade 3. Na isasagawa ang sistematikong pananaliksik tungkol sa paksang tinalakay, Filipino, grade 7. Use the appropriate reading style, scanning, skimming, speed reading, intensive reading for one's purpose. English grade 8. Graphs linear inequalities in two variables. Math grade 8. Demonstrate the generation of electricity by movement of a magnet through a coil. Science grade 10. Sings themes or melodic fragments of given classical period pieces. Music grade 9. Sings medieval chant, troubadour song, madrigal, choral and selections from oratorio with correct pitch, rhythm, expression, and style. Music grade 9. Show skills in creating a linoleum, rubber or woodcut print with the proper use of carving tools. Art grade 5. Executes the skills involved in dance. PE 9. Applies correct techniques to minimize risks of injuries. PE grade 10. Demonstrates proper response before, during, and after a disaster or an emergency situation. Health 9. Practices proper self-care procedures. Health grade 5. Demonstrates appropriate first aid for common injuries or conditions. Health grade 5. Demonstrates various stress management techniques that one can use every day in dealing with stress. Health grade 7. Demonstrates coping skills in managing loss and grief. Health grade 7. Defense written research report. Practical research 2 grade 12. Use the internet as a tool for credible research and information gathering. Empowerment technologies grade 12. So, process oriented assessment is a performance based assessment. It's concerned with the actual task performance rather than the output or product of the activity. Product oriented assessment. Students' performance may lead to a concrete product. The students' products are the concern of product oriented authentic assessment. Product oriented assessment is a kind of assessment wherein the assessor views and scores the final product made and not on the actual performance of making that product. It is concerned on the product alone and not on the process. It is more concerned to the outcome or the performance of the learner. These are examples of learning outcomes that fall under product-oriented assessment. These are lifted from the K-12 curriculum guide and course and syllable on principles and methods of teaching and assessment learning 1 and 2. First is nakagagawa ng isang proyekto gamit ang iba't ibang multimedia at technology tools sa pagpapatupad ng mga batas sa kalinisan, kaligtasan, kalusugan, at kapayapaan. AP Grade 3. Creates movements to music of a particular Philippine festival. Music Grade 7. Creates designs by using two or more kinds of lines, colors, and shapes by repeating or contrasting them to show rhythm. Art Grade 2. Creates original tie-dye textile designed by following the traditional steps in tie-dyeing using one or two colors. Art 4. Prepares a physical activity program. PE Grade 8. Writes coherent review of literature. Practical Research 1 Grade 11. Creates an original or derivative ICT content using online creation, tools, platforms, and applications to effectively communicate messages related to specific Professional tracks, empowerment, technologies, grade 12. Creates an original or derivative ICT content to effectively communicate or present data or information related to specific professional tracks. Empowerment Technologies Grade 12 makes a lesson plan following the inductive lesson development principles of teaching college of education formulates multiple choice test items aligned to the learning outcomes, assessment and learning 1. Develops a scoring rubric for an oral defense of a research paper, assessment and learning. So the process-oriented approach evaluates a skill is performed, whereas the product-oriented evaluates the outcome of the skill performance. Figure 11 gives additional examples of process performance and product performance that are assessed with rubrics. So first is types of performance of process-oriented assessment. First is physical skills, use of equipment, oral communication, and work habits. Example is playing a musical instrument, doing a forward roll, preparing a slide for the microscope, making a speech to the class, reading aloud, conversing in a foreign language, working independently. Next is types of performance by product oriented assessment. First is constructed objects, written essays, themes, reports, term papers, other academic products that demonstrate understanding of concepts. For example is wooden bookshelf, set of wheels, handmade apron, watercolor painting, laboratory report, term paper on theoretical conventions in Shakespeare's day, model or diagram of a structure, flower, planetary system, lastly, concept map. So DepEd's emphasis on performance assessment. DepEd Order S 2015 to 8 includes three components of summative assessment. First is written work, performance task, and quarterly assessment. The quarterly assessment consists of objective tests, written, performance-based assessment, or a combination. For the performance task component, the same DepEd order states. So the students may create or innovate products or do performance-based tasks. Performance-based tasks may include skills demonstration, group presentation, oral work, multimedia presentation, and research projects. Written outputs is also considered as performance task. So among the three components of DepEd summative assessment performance, tasks contribute the most, from 40% to 60% to the student's quarterly grade. This is true to junior high school, grades 1 to 10, and senior high school, grade 11 to 12. Obviously, DepEd puts greater weight on performance tasks.
When constructing performance tasks, be guided by the acronym GRASPS, shared by Wiggins and McTighe. What does the GRASPS mean? So it is a goal, role, audience, situation, product, and standards and criteria. Goal. Provide a statement of the task. Establish the goal of the task or state the problem, challenge, or obstacle in the task. So it is a establish the challenge, issues, or problem to solve. So for example, your goal is to write a poem. So it is about the task if the student to achieve. Rule. Define the role of the student in the task. State the job of the student in the task. So it gives a student a role that they might be taking in a familiar real life situation. Like for example, you are a contestant from the college student, so it is about a role of the student in the task. Audience. Identify the target audience within the context of the scenario. Identify the target
audience whom students are saving the problem for a creating product for. Like for example, you are a target audience in the judges of the poem writing contest. So it is about the students who are the target audience. So, situation. Explain the situation, what's the context, or what is the challenge. So, it is to create the scenario or explain the context of the situation. Like, for example, you are the one of the contestant in the poem writing contest during the education month. So, it is about the context or scenario of the goal. Product. Clarify what the students will create and why they will create it. So, paint a clear picture of the what and why of the product creation or the performance. Like, for example, write a four stanza poem with the four lines in each stanza. So, it is about the what is created and why it will be created. Standards and criteria. Identify specific standards for success. Give rubric to the students or develop them with the students. So, inform the students how the work will be assessed by the assumed audience. Like, for example, you will be assessed according to the criteria stipulated in the rubrics. So, it is about the rubric or criteria of the task, so it will be served as a guide in judging the task. Guidelines for performance assessment. According to Ariation and Russell 2008, there are four considerations that must be made when using performance evaluation. First, establishing a clear objective. Second, establishing observing standards. Third, creating welcoming environment. And lastly, giving the performance grade or rating. So they should have knowledge and skills in order to prepare their students for upcoming assessment through effective instruction, constructing quality assessments and evaluating assessment materials for use. So teachers should be able to find ways to access as directly and accurately as possible. So teachers must be familiar with a wide variety of assessment tools. Make good assessment choice for the various levels of educational outcomes they encounter. Establishing a clear purpose. What is the purpose of the performance assessments? To assign a grade, to evaluate the student's progress, to generate products to be included in a learning portfolio, or to provide students sample of work for college admissions. To develop a successful performance assessment, it's important to have a clear and concise learning objective or goals. So, identifying these goals can assess you with understanding what methods of measurement to use while evaluating assessments, give students the confidence of knowing what to expect through their assessments, and help with adjusting any lesson plans after reviewing assessment results. So, in learning goals can also help students create a clear vision of what they should know by the end of the course. For example, in this instance, the teacher wanted to challenge her student to use critical thinking and problem solving skills. So she also wanted them to exhibit less codependence and more individuality while completing this assessment. The teacher did not want students rely on her direction about how to complete each step of this assessment. Identify observing criteria. These criteria of good performance are made clear to students at the beginning of the teacher learning process to help them focus on their learning. These observable criteria also help the teacher or anyone assigning for that matter make his or her observations more systematic and focused. So the most important factor of a performance assessment is a criteria or rubric. A rubric should be provide clarity for the students to understand what the performance assessment is testing for. So, how to complete a performance assessment and how to get a specific grade or score. This can also help an instructor evaluate if the criteria actually measure the student's performance, because the student should be able to use the information from the rubric to create an experiment or a report to show that they can probably apply the knowledge that they gain from the course. Providing an appropriate setting. While you observe the target behavior in a natural setting, like observing a student teacher teach as he or she teaches in a real classroom or observe her in an announced and prepared demonstration teaching with the classmates acting as a student. So, assessment expert advice is a rule of thumb. It is a good idea to observe the students on more than one occasion because a single performance might not fairly represent student knowledge or skills, according to Soundtrack 2009. Also, after the standards are identified, the structure should find a way students can demonstrate that they are fully capable of meeting that standard. So, this to create an authentic task. So, an authentic task is an assignment given to the students designed to assess their ability to apply standards driven knowledge and skills to real world challenges. And then the task is considered authentic when the students are asked to build their own responses rather than selecting from given answers. Then the second is a factor for authentic assessment is the replication of real world challenges. The well-formulated standard should be spelled out the task students need to complete for demonstrating the mastery of it. So example, once the goal were identified, she select the common core standards to be addressed with this performance assessment. So she decided that assessment should be measure students' understanding of conditional probability and rules of probability. Judging or scoring the performance. To judge or score the product or the process or behavior demonstrated, a scoring rubric is a must to ensure objectivity of scoring. So, you will learn how to make a scoring rubric in the next chapter. The last step in constructing authentic assessment is the constructing of a rubric to measure students' performance on a task. A rubric is a scoring scale used to assess the student's performance along with a task-specific set of criteria. The, the constructing of the rubric begins from the set of criteria identified in step 3. So, the instructor should not look for everything in every assessment. So, that is why in step 3, the instructor should keep the number of criteria manageable. The rubric can be either analytic or holistic depending on whether the instructor wants to judge performance for each criteria or the separately or altogether.